It's the Jim and Terry Show from the Hobbit Hole Studio in Bobcaygeon. I'm one of your hosts, and there's only one this week for the next few podcasts until Jim and I meet again. He's going to the CNE, and I wish him all the well taking in what used to be Canada's national exhibition. All things great and celebratory about Canada on display, and as well all the rides. I can remember being quite ill at the exhibition as a kid after some of the rides. Awful stuff. Maybe it was food poisoning, who knows? But my memories of the X were tainted by throwing up and waiting for the streetcar to take me to the subway station. Yeah, not fun. So, Jim, I hope you have something better than that in store. This podcast is going to be taking a look at an editorial from the Niagara on the Lake paper, the Niagara Now, and the editorial that's making some headway because it is calling out Pierre Poilievre for what Democrats would have said about Trump, that he is good at something, but it isn't something good. To be good at something that's not good is not to be good at all. There's a play on words for you. Anyway, I'm going to take a look at the details in an article, an editorial by a local paper. It seems that the local journalists, they're the ones who still do the fight on the front line of issues and aren't afraid to mix it up and call what they see and not only ask questions, but when the answers are vague and evasive, they ask a strong follow-up question, and that has got my interest. That piques my interest. Too often I see reporters that ask a question, seems to be a good question, and then when the answer is dodged, or the answer is not given, or someone gets up and leaves instead of answering the question, it's sad when there's no follow-up. But there is in this paper, in this article. The article is by Richard Harley, editor-in-chief from the Niagara Now paper, and it is a superb example of what journalism in Canada, free, unfettered journalism that's not beholden to foreign investors for profit, for spinning according to an editorial bias based on political agendas. It's an independent paper, one of the few. They're all being bought up by, dare I say it, American conservative investment interests. So much of Canadian media has been sold off, and it is in the hands of a few. We can remember the Murdoch empire holding Fox News as its, what do you call it, a clarion call, where they are blasting out their political points of view and supporting Donald Trump when they're in a nearly $1 billion lawsuit for spreading false information. That's a news agency charged with $1 billion fine. Well, $786 million. Got to be more specific, I guess. Anyway, in the midst of all that calamitous news reporting and fake news allegations by Donald Trump, who really has smeared the media unfairly, in my opinion, and made everybody doubt what they're reading, doubt what you're seeing. There is this little light in Niagara on the lake, and it is in the form of this editorial. I'll put the link in the description so you can read it yourself. Poilievre has been gallivanting around the country selling his slogans. Yes, axe the tax, build the homes, bring it home. Well, those are the three that jump to my mind anyway. But can you vote for someone who has three-word slogans? Slogans are catchy. Yes, they can spread, and they are populist by nature. Easy to remember. And that's the problem. Complex policies usually can't be summed up in three-word bumper stickers, and that's what Pierre Poilievre is trying to do. So let's compare what Poilievre is saying with what's really going on and poke behind the curtain and see the difference between Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. And if the difference isn't obvious and apparent by the photo ops, by the tone, by the smile or thumbs up in Pierre Poilievre's case. Who uses a thumbs up anymore to mean anything? Trump has destroyed it. It's almost like the convoy in Ottawa destroyed the patriotism reflected in raising a Canadian flag. So much so that even I, in my rural community, get a little shell-shocked when I see trucks with a Canadian flag. I wonder about the motive, their agenda. What is it that they're trying to say as they drive what I call, unaffectionately, their big-ass trucks with hockey sticks and Canadian flags? Well, I think the stereotype is served by that image, and yet, is that really patriotism? Well, that's one of the things that we're going to cover in this thing. The editor does a great job of the Niagara paper, Richard Harley, and I'm just going to look at some of the excerpts of things that he does say. Pierre Poilievre made the stop on Niagara-on-the-Lake on last Thursday, and here's a leader who might at first glance, he's a slick dresser, got his new look going down, he seems to be managed well, seems to be capable of holding some rational arguments or scoring good political points, but what he's really good at is not political debate. It's pandering, lying, and misleading. Well, pandering just means what do we call it in American politics? You throw red meat for your base. Isn't that what Trump does? Tells the people what they want to see, what they want to believe, what they believe is wrong. So get rid of all immigrants. They're destroying the country. They're taking the black jobs. What? Yeah, well, there's a lot of that going on here in Canada too with the anti-liberal speak. That's all in little slogans and little mantras that they repeat. So these things that Pierre Poilievre is going are hardly rallies. They're more like, what do you call them, pep rallies, where you're already preaching to the choir like a sermon on a Sunday morning. You already got them in the seats. They came. So they're there not to get something different, not to be informed, but to be reinforced. And there's a big difference in political rallies. Are you drawing people new? Are you creating an interest and excitement? People want to see what you're all about, or you're just reinforcing your base. The people who you've already stoked fear and fanned the flames of hatred, and that's what they're going to do. And you're there to simply sloganeer your way to what? The Prime Ministership of Canada? I don't think so, but let's see what else is in this article. So pandering to a crowd that's so anti-liberal they're willing to eat up and digest anything Poilievre says. He's hoping that voters so dislike Trudeau that they won't see beyond Poilievre's own simplistic bumper sticker rhetoric. Here are a few examples of how good Poilievre is at spinning webs of lies that sound to the ill-informed electorate like truth. And warning, there's a lot of purposeful misleading and contradiction to unpack. So here it goes. First, and this is the editor writing, so he says, we, as in the Niagara-on-the-Lake Now paper, asked Poilievre what his party would do to ensure it supports local journalism. What was Poilievre's answer? Quote, free speech. Or rather, maybe that's through an apple. Free speech. Okay, free speech. I'm going to repeal the censorship laws. This is again in quotes. This is Pierre Poilievre's answer. Make it possible for Canadian news to be visible again on Facebook, Instagram, and all other social media platforms, he said. So he's going to get rid of terrible censorship laws? What? Well, let's unpack this. First of all, there's no such thing as a censorship law in Canada, period. We assume that he's referring, maybe, because he didn't say it, so we have to guess, the Online News Act Bill C-18, which is aimed to ensure that dominant platforms compensate news businesses when their content is made available on their platforms. In other words, when big players like Google or Meta share news content that is created by Canadian media companies, and benefits from the billions of views those stories produce for those platforms, then those companies, like Google, must pay for that privilege. That makes sense. The law is simple, fair, and in the best interest of Canadian journalism organizations, and something that even Google has agreed to, by the way. The only censorship being done is by Meta. Zuckerberg, who controls Facebook and Instagram, has refused. His company has not agreed to pay its fair share, and in response to the laws Canada passed to help ensure journalism organizations get paid, it has, this is Meta and Zuckerberg, have banned Canadian news on its platforms. This shows the core values of companies like Meta are not to help you, but to exploit you. Remember, I keep on asking where you get your news. If you get your news on Meta or Facebook and Instagram, you're not getting your news. You're getting some slice of something that is other than all the news that is available to you, because Zuckerberg refuses to pay Canadian journalists and news sources. So to recap, Poilievre calls Bill C-18 a censorship law, which it is not. He's being blatantly, well, not lying maybe, but misleading for certain. And to the average uninformed voter who doesn't understand Bill C-18, it would seem to be true. We mean this with as little offense as possible, but he's relying on his voter base to not be smart enough to know the difference. Really? Okay, so we're saying that Poilievre's base is not able to understand Canadian law? That sounds... I don't know if I'd rather go there, but it does have a certain ring of truth to it. We don't dive into the issues as much as we should. There's so much more in the article. If you get a chance to read it, I'll post the link, but it really does hold Pierre Poilievre's feet to the fire of journalistic criticism. One of the best examples I've seen compared to all the Canadian media that I consume, whether it's CBC, CFTO, all the big networks, or whether it's the print journals, the National Post, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, Niagara Now. I'll put a link in the description. Read all about it. Get your news. Bye-bye for now.